There are a lot of threads that connect the three of us, but particularly the thread of Oberlin College, where you were a student, and where Avery was a student, and where Avery also had the seeds of his professional career, which led to my being here.
Right.
So
well, we've all taught here.
And we've all taught here, and both of you
and
have been students here. But I think the other thread that connects the two of you was a production of King Lear that Avery conceptualized with the director Hal Scott some years ago at Yale Repertory Theater. And so I wondered, Avery, if you could talk about coming to this production and also how it fits in this vein of your career where you've been interested in restaging classics from a different point of view.
Yeah, so 42 years ago, I came to Oberlin. I was involved in a company named Psuekay, P-S-E-U-K-A-Y. You're an all-black company that was not connected to the theater department, as a matter of fact. But the interest was to find a way to come together to psychologically and emotionally connect in what, to some extent, was a foreign environment, that is to say, predominantly white institution, that for the first time had large numbers of African-American people on its campus. And so the work that we did was always about this exchange of expression, about how we felt, not only about being here, about being black, about what's going on in the world. You know, it's the middle of the 60s, war, civil rights, all of that stuff. And past that point, and even earlier, you know, theater has become and remains a tool to be able to talk about the world in some sense, in some human way. Out of the Black Arts movement in the 60s, part of the discovery for me was that it's not just merely, it is not sufficient to make something colored.
Well,
you know, that you can call something black and then that therefore has great meaning and great ramifications, you know, substantively. It is a point of departure, it seems to me. And thereby, I mean, if we cut to this Lear many years later, then I've been collaborating with Hal Scott since 1982. And the first production we did was Paul Robeson. In any case, well, and then I must tell you then that we did Othello together.
Yes.
First starting at Rutgers, and then we went to the Folger, which is now the Shakespeare Theater, but the Folger Library Theater in Washington, D.C. And the production was not the standard one because Iago was black, you know, played by Andre Braugher, as a matter of fact, and Emilia was black. I mean, and the idea certainly was revolved around this thing that those who love you, those who are closest to you, are the people who can destroy you. So it deepened the relationship or the story about betrayal, you know, and love between Iago and Othello. Interestingly enough, some of the greatest actors forward, you know, from 17th century, et cetera, forward, played Iago in blackface. And so there was great hue and cry when we did the production in Washington, saying that, you know, you've destroyed what Shakespeare wrote, but on the contrary. Because once we start to plumb the depths of what is human about us, then it's no longer about the surface of it. So it's not about colorblind casting so much as it is about what informs the story. What are we trying to say? So the Lear that we did was, let's talk about or create a world in which it is not about color at all. And what we chose and what we talked about was setting it, you know, in pre-Columbus America. Setting it in a time, if one agrees that the first seafarers of the world were African, And certainly we can find a time where there's no discussion of race. There's no, you know, it's this ancient world. And it's an ancient tale, as a matter of fact. So this idea also of African American people doing Shakespeare just to prove that they can do it is not sufficient at all. That yes, we're capable of doing, and have been for a long time, from Ira Aldrich and all the people. We already know that. But yet, even in the 20th century or 21st century, there still is some question, you know, about who should be doing it and who can do it, et cetera. So and in any case, that once we remove all the superficial entries into the discussion of our humanness, then it's quite another matter. And so this Death of a Salesman in the same way, that what we do, we reach into the culture and side by side and then converge great work. That's what it is. I mean, there's no question, for example, about the magnificence, and this is not romantic, about the magnificence of the history of African people in the world. And if you put that culture, you can put that culture, match that culture with any culture in the world. You put that together with great work, and it's a match. It's a perfect match. If we can talk about Sophocles, you know, we can talk about Arthur Miller, we can talk about James Baldwin, we can talk about, you see what I mean? I mean, that work has no time. Great work has no time. You put that together with a classic people, and you have a classic production in the 21st century at Oberlin College.
You know, it's interesting to note that Othello you worked on was also done here in Cleveland. I had a chance to work around that production. And that in the King Lear, Petronia Paley was also involved, who's in our production here of Death of a Salesman, playing Linda. And so I think the impact of that work you have been doing has really informed a lot of other productions and audiences.